Hi everyone, Courtney Gruenholz here again, sporting yet another Fear Street t-shirt with the cover of the prom queen on it. I apologize for my lighting. I have natural lighting through the windows out here in the living room. So half of my face is like kind of white and the other half is kind of red. But I have no way to fix the lighting in here. So I got to see the final part of the Fear Street trilogy on Netflix. Part 3, set in 1666. And a little bit in 1994 to conclude and round up our story. So, out of all three, I would say it's probably the best part. Not only because we get backstory about the curse on Shadyside, we get the main story wrapped up. So, it's probably the best part out of all three of them, I guess. For me, part 3, part 1, part 2. It's not that I didn't like 2, it's just it really didn't have, well, it had important parts to the story, but it was kind of not very Fear Street to me. It was more like its own kind of like slasher movie homage to, like, summer camp slasher movies. So it didn't really feel like Fear Street. Part 1 kind of did, and part 3, since some of it takes place in 1994 to wrap up our story, felt like Fear Street. And even going back to 1666, because if you've read the Fear Street books, so I'm not trying to exclude the people who haven't read the books yet, haven't read all of them, and are just now getting into Fear Street. But if you read some of the Fear Street books, like the Fear Street Saga and some of the Fear Street sagas, and even a few of the trilogies which are set in, Shadyside's past, like the Fear Park trilogy and the Cataluna Chronicles, which has a story that takes place back in kind of like the same timeline as the original Fear Street Saga and like Fear Street Saga books, where they go back a little bit and kind of recount the history of the Fear family and other people that are connected to the Fear family that, get touched by, the kind of curse on the Fear family. So, definitely has part 3, since it's set back in the past, definitely has a lot of, vibes from like The Witch, and even like a bit of The Crucible. I always think about the movie with Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder. So definitely those Puritan horror vibes. So definitely kind of more like The Witch, but kind of with all the hysteria and stuff. It's like The Crucible. So as we saw in the end of part 2, we had Dina kind of have this flashback once she touched Sarah Fier's hand back to her being in Sarah Fier's body. So I think she gets to see everything through Sarah Fier's eyes, but we see it as Dina, but it's really Sarah Fier. And so there are a bunch of people in the town. In this time setting, it's called Union, before it becomes Sunnyvale and Shadyside split up. A lot of people from like cast from like part 1 and some of the cast from part 2 are in this third part back in Puritan times. And I guess some of them are supposed to be like their ancestors, because some of them still have like the same like last names, and some characters even have like the same names. So like Tommy from the second part, there's a Thomas, and Ziggy and her sister Cindy, their last name's Berman. The girls that they play, Abigail and Constance, their last name's Berman. So So I think it's either ancestors or putting faces with people that she knows to kind of get the story going. And of course, as we know from parts 1 and 2, Sarah Fier was accused of witchcraft and cursing the town and everything. But you've been kind of getting clues, because it kind of went where I thought it was going to go with one of the first twists that you get. I kind of thought it was going to go there because it reminded me of elements from the Fear Street saga and other, again, books set back in the past of Shadyside and the Fear family and stuff like that, and characters connected to that. So I kind of knew where it was going to go with why we have two different towns, like the affluent part of town and the poor part of town. Kind of knew it was going to go there a little bit, and it does get explained. So, but it touches more on the characters, and it still kind of has that connection to like the first part. So they're Dina's in Sarah Fier's body, and the actress who plays Sam, she plays a girl named Hannah. So they still have chemistry as these two different characters, which again, I'm not really sure if it's supposed to be just seeing someone through her eyes that she can connect with, or like an actual, maybe distant ancestor, distant relative in the past. But I like how they do that. It's really interesting. And that way you get to see people that were in the first movie, and you get to see people that were in the second movie. So it does kind of, all combine and collide together to bring about one whole story. So, and since it's kind of more set back in the past, it's not really as slashery as part 2 is, and not as, kind of serial killer-esque like part 1. It just has like that old time horror element to it. So there are disturbing things that happen in this movie, things that I didn't think that I was going to see, but after part 2 kind of upped its game with making some of the victims younger, it still went with that vibe. But we also learned a little bit in part 1 about what happened in the past, with the first person to go crazy being Cyrus Miller, who's like the reverend of the town, and that he killed little kids. And they also tell you how he killed the kids, and you get to see it, but you don't get to see it. You get to see the aftermath of it. I'm kind of glad that at least you get to see the aftermath. I don't think they could do the actual slang, because they kind of veiled it a little bit in the second one, but they still went there. And then, of course, if you've read R.L. Stine, Fear Street books, you know that animals don't have very long shelf lives. So when those happen, I kind of didn't want them to go there, but I knew they were going to go there, and they're very disturbing. So, but it keeps you on your seat. It fleshes out the history, which makes the story more interesting. So, so we get a twist. But again, if you read R.L. Stine, I mean, even if you haven't read Fear Street, but you've read Goosebumps, you know he has those twists and turns and things that you didn't expect were going to happen. But once you've read them enough, you know he has a formula. R.L. Stine's very formulaic in his writing, so it's very easy sometimes to guess where the story is going to go. And so if you knew what was going to happen with the story, then it was pretty obvious. Then when we get thrown back into 1994 to wrap up our plotline, our story, it's really interesting, and it's still very 90s, and it's interesting. I guess I'm pausing a little bit because I don't know what I really want to say about the ending, because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't watched it yet. But the ending, it kind of made me mad in one way, just because I just hope that the ending has some sort of payoff, that we're not left wondering something. Because I've seen that happen with shows, like TV shows, and then all of a sudden, you never get to find out what happens. I'm hoping that this has been a big boom for Netflix, that they would either do more movies actually based on the Fear Street books, or they would do a TV show based on the books, or even just make more movies that draw from the books, because this ending is going to leave you feeling probably the same way I did. It's not that it's a bad ending, it's just, it kind of feels like, I really want to spoil it, but I can't. But again, like I said, if you've read enough R.L. Stine Fear Street books, or you read enough R.L. Stine Goosebumps books, you know that there are twists and turns, and sometimes endings aren't black or white. So I'm just going to leave it there. But again, though, as a trilogy, the third part is the best part, because we get that backstory and that conclusion. And the first part was good because it gave me like 90s kind of nostalgia vibes. And then the second part it just seemed a little bit too non-Fear Street and more just too slashery. Again, because R.L. Stine's Fear Street books weren't exactly like very gory. So, I mean, there were scenes, like, you'd end up with characters being killed, but most of the early ones didn't have that. So they weren't really as slashery as you would think. But, again, I'm not knocking it. It's just, I got built up. I thought it was really good. And then things felt like, okay, this is good. And then the ending came, and then I was like, I don't really know how to feel. So, again, if you don't have Netflix and you know somebody who does, see if you guys can get together and watch it. If you haven't got to watch parts 1 or 2 yet, I did videos about those. Tried to be non-spoilers, but if you haven't got to see part 1 or part 2 on Netflix, go ahead and watch those before you watch this third one. Watch them all together, and all in all, it's good. Third part is the best part, so I'd give that like 5 out of 5 stars, because it was just the best. So that's my opinion of these Fear Street movies. So looks like I'll probably be going back to talking about my books again. I don't know. I have an idea about something that I might do, because I still have a bunch of Fear Street shirts that I ordered from TeePublic still coming in the mail. And I don't know. Even though I might not talk about Fear Street anymore, I like showing off my Fear Street swag that I got. So, but who knows what video you'll get from me next time. But until then, I hope you have a good day, and go watch the Fear Street trilogy on Netflix if you have Netflix. And if you don't have it and you know somebody who does, make a movie night of it. Make a movie weekend of it. Enjoy it. It's really good. So, until then, I will see you next time. Have a good day.